She crossed the line, thinking her money gave her the right to do anything. Slapping a royal guard became the peak of her arrogance. But the hero's reaction was unexpected, and the consequences? It was a bustling day at Buckingham Palace. A crowd of tourists filled the area along the White Line, their phones aimed at the royal guards. A young guard in a red uniform and bearskin hat stood motionless, embodying the sternness and grandeur of British tradition. His face was utterly calm, his gaze fixed straight ahead. Among the many tourists, one woman stood out in a bright yellow coat. She laughed loudly, drawing attention to herself. "Is this a museum? Where's the emotion? Do these guys ever smile?" She stepped closer, crossing the line most people avoided breaching, and continued loudly. "Hey, buddy, are you alive? Show some emotion for the photo." The crowd began exchanging glances. Some scoffed disapprovingly, while others pulled out their phones to record the scene. The guard remained still, his motionlessness seeming almost unreal. The woman, emboldened by the attention, raised her phone, filming herself with the guard in the background. "Here we go, folks. This is the famous Royal Guard. No emotions, no reactions, like mannequins." Someone in the crowd loudly remarked, "Show some respect for tradition, ma'am. They're not here for your entertainment." But this only fueled her antics. "Tradition? Oh, please, it's just a show. We're tourists. We're the ones paying for this." Her loud laughter echoed around, irritating part of the gathering. Still, the guard remained motionless, his gaze unwavering. Nothing happening around him seemed capable of breaking his stoic resolve. "Come on! Smile for us, soldier boy! Or are you afraid the Queen will fire you?" she shouted one last time, crossing her arms and waiting for a reaction. The crowd froze, divided between those suppressing grins and others clearly disapproving of her behavior. Several people were still recording, sensing that this was building up to something more. And the guard? He stood as immovable as ever, embodying honor and discipline, ignoring everything happening around him. Failing to get a reaction, the woman clearly decided that the guard standing before her was nothing more than a prop she could use however she pleased. Stepping forward, she crossed the white line as though it didn't exist. Voices from the crowd immediately erupted. "Hey, ma'am, step back. That's not allowed." One of the men closest to her tried to stop her. "Do you realize you're not allowed to cross that line? It's a violation." She waved him off without even turning her head. "Oh, please. What's he going to do? Look, he doesn't even move." Walking right up to the guard, she extended her hand and touched his uniform. With a mocking expression, she ran her fingers over the fabric, as if inspecting its quality. Not bad," she drawled. "Custom made, or is this part of the tradition too?" The crowd began to murmur. Someone yelled, "Hands off! That's disrespectful!" But Karen only laughed louder, confident in her impunity. The guard remained motionless, but his gaze grew subtly sharper, as if silently warning her that this game had gone too far. "So, are you even alive?" she exclaimed, and suddenly patted him on the shoulder. "If you don't react, you're just a doll." The crowd gasped. Some started whispering, while others pulled out their phones to capture the moment. A few openly voiced their outrage. "This is too much! Leave him alone!" But that didn't stop her. Fueled by the attention, she decided to push things even further. Raising her hand, she delivered a light slap to the guard's face, her actions full of mockery and defiance. A tense silence followed. The spectators froze, and then emotions erupted. Someone shouted, "That's too far! Shame on her!" Others filmed furiously, trying to capture the guard's expression. Though he remained rooted to the spot, his stoic demeanor no longer seemed merely part of his duty. It was a testament to his inner strength, discipline, and honor. The woman, however, continued basking in the spotlight, oblivious to the fact that she had already crossed the line, both literally and figuratively. The tension in the air was palpable as the crowd fell silent, as if collectively holding its breath to see what would happen next. Maintaining perfect posture, the guard suddenly took a deliberate, precise step forward. This small action exploded like a bombshell. Gasps rippled through the crowd. His voice, loud and commanding, rang out across the square. "Ma'am, You have crossed the permitted boundary. Step back immediately." The woman froze, her confidence momentarily evaporating. Her expression shifted, first to surprise, then to unease. The crowd, stunned, watched in tense anticipation. Taking a step back, she tried to salvage her dignity with an exaggerated eye roll and a defensive retort. "Oh, come on, I was just joking." But her words seemed to convince no one. A security officer approached with a calm yet resolute demeanor. His gaze was firm as he gestured clearly toward the exit, leaving no room for argument. "Ma'am, this behavior is unacceptable. Please step outside the area." The woman muttered something about overreaction and just a joke. But under the crowd's judgmental stares, she had no choice but to comply. The officer confidently escorted her out of the restricted zone. And then it happened. The crowd burst into loud applause, accompanied by cheers. "Well done! That's how it's done! Finally, someone put her in her place." Many people filmed the moment, and someone shouted, "The Royal Guard has once again shown what honor and discipline mean." Reaction on social media. No sooner had the woman disappeared from view than videos of the incident began spreading across social media like wildfire. The comments poured in like a flood. "This is absolutely disgraceful. Such disrespect for British traditions. This is why I respect the Royal Guard. That guard is a true professional. Who does she think she is? Thanks to the security for stepping in quickly." Returning to his position, the guard once again stood in absolute stillness, as if nothing had happened. Yet the crowd around him now regarded him with newfound respect. People whispered among themselves, and some even attempted to thank him with approving nods or gestures. What began as an act of brazen disrespect ended in a triumph of resilience. The next day at Buckingham Palace, the crowd was even larger than usual. Tourists buzzed with talk of the previous day's incident, and many had come specifically to catch a glimpse of that guard. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of tension and curiosity. Amid the gathering appeared the culprit of the scandal herself. She no longer looked as confident. Her face was strained, and her eyes avoided contact with those around her. Under the piercing gazes of the crowd, she approached the security staff, apologized for her behavior, and quickly disappeared into the throng. Her actions had already become the subject of widespread condemnation online, where she had been labeled the antagonist. Meanwhile, the guard, back on duty, stood as motionless as ever, as if the previous day had been nothing more than a routine moment in his service. His silence and stern gaze underscored the dignity that spectators had come to admire. Yet, something about his presence felt different. A quiet sense of victory radiated from him. A man with a young son approached the guard. He paused for a moment, leaned in slightly and said, "Thank you for your service. People need to remember that you're not an attraction, but a symbol of our history." The guard gave a slight nod in acknowledgement, without breaking his stance. This subtle gesture, barely noticeable, stirred an emotional response among the onlookers. The crowd erupted into applause, and someone shouted, "You're the pride of Britain! Keep it up!" People who once viewed the guards merely as part of a tourist spectacle now saw them as guardians of tradition. Adults began discussing the incident with their children, explaining why it was important to respect the culture and those who embody it. The guard adjusted his bearskin hat, let out a quiet sigh, and resumed his post. The sun, breaking through the clouds, cast its light on him, lending the scene a symbolic sense of closure. The crowd slowly dispersed, but the newfound sense of respect surrounding the royal guards lingered in the hearts of